After spending 10 years of my life to say a squared divided by square root of psi minus beta times square root theta equals beta times alpha, I decided to make instructions for Have You Ever, should anyone be brave and courageous and watch the thousands of videos I made as a book on video and not a dissertation on paper in an audiobook downloadable. What was horribly obvious along the way was what letters HAVEYOUEVER and others don't explain when there's no body, no behavior everyone insists has so much relevant in 2021. Humans are breaking windows to have their behavior ignored and their gesture and their posture appreciated. And unfortunately, medicine has fallen far behind where humans need to be to defeat climate change. Not all degrees and dissertations and doctorates have to be videos. But what Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud did with their books, drawings, diagrams, and graphs about information from experiments with behavior they observed, fails to achieve goals of Black Lives Matter and other relevant voices and leaders who hate racism as much as me, a voice on a video now. But I also refuse to sacrifice my freedom. I decided a long time ago was worth more than some dollars in my pocket and some cents in my bank account. Have You Ever, a video book from beginning to end, will do what Infinite Jest did on paper in a lot less time, and Wretched of the Earth did in only a few pages, and what other neuroscience textbooks professionally achieve with printing standards far above my iPhone I used for this dissertation called Have You Ever? Working with children from the beginning taught me faces and how a person looks at another person and speaks to another human can make a big difference when there's poverty and suffering and families working tirelessly for a house and a home in a coronavirus pandemic and a dead economy now. A psychiatry and a psychology written on paper and printed on a book are only part of a world, a civilization, an object in outer space next to a ball of fire. An object called a moon. Any first part beginning to any set of new processes in a system involving a mathematical psi can't stop an important part of medicine and health to provide more stimulation and lies already perpetuated on internet websites and in cities such as Capitol Hill, Seattle. The purpose of psychological cognition with pediatric medicine has to do with a child and a brain, a body, in a world where they have consciousness and need energy, sleep. For them not only to see a skull with "have you ever" and a cube from Italy, colored blue, but to have rainbows and cheeseburgers and unicorns, dragons shooting fire to kill an enemy with some Legos. In other words, playtime. And lastly, quantum neurology, a plan for adults who need assistance, who need what children need but are not babies anymore. Mind has been dominance for far too long. I hate to say, unfortunately now. Those slaves everyone say they are going to free, they're going to set free with their money available whenever they need it, and their social housing and legal immigration politically, are not cognizant, aware, in other words, of what happened in Tibet and other places around the globe, where ideas about communism and socialism didn't have the quantum neurology of mathematics and logic. A squared divided by square root of psi minus capital B times square root theta equals capital B times alpha. They had and have what the United States of America has protected with soldiers and guns in Iraq and Afghanistan and Vietnam and Korea. When they said to Hitler and the Nazis and told Japan when they attacked Pearl Harbor, they exceeded the limits and had no backup plan for what they were doing now. Similar tactics as those psychiatrists in those offices and those psychologists who watch and observe are used by the governments advocated by these protesters and activists taking over parts of Capitol Hill called CHOP, Chad, and other locations in this part of North America now. But with climate change and a world on fire, from what a Nobel laureate named Greta Thunberg talks about eloquently, there's not time for children such as Oliver and Nola, Sam and Liam, Owen, Davis, and Moira. There's seconds and minutes ticking down until I've got to stop this video and restart and attempt to finish what I began at New Horizons Ministries in Belltown, in Seattle, in Washington State in 2012. I talked with kids with names called Epic and Symbol, Eliza and Brad, John, and names I was too scared to say then and I'm too frightened to say now, who came from foster homes and tents in a city back then still recovering from when John T. Williams was shot up here on Capitol Hill by Officer Burke of the East Precinct. And the Great Recession a few years before, when I graduated with an undergraduate degree. Confused and misdirected from an ailment nobody could explain other than a color of a mood, an emotion in my mind, and a self and an ego needing Jesus and some union gospel prayer. And then later, a bread of life dinner and a shelter to hide from the bullies who come out at night and the drug dealers who ruthlessly practice duality and sing about their stimulation and reward those who are faithful with small amounts of money now. Have you ever doesn't make sense to most people, unfortunately. But for those students in those college classrooms, those professors and those doctors and those surgeons and those nurses and those staff of those hospitals who want a better option and choice for their pediatric medicine patients and adults who have addictions and who could suffer from PTSD and other symptoms from wars fought, to speak these words now and say, never give up.